Rananim, and welcome to another edition of Cobbs Corner. If this is your first time listening to Cobbs Corner, welcome, and to my returning listeners, welcome back. On this week's edition of Cobbs Corner, we'll be reviewing Rocky V. Reluctantly retired from fighting, Rocky takes charge of Mickey's gym and agrees to train a young protege who's hungry for success. Rocky Balboa is forced to retire after having permanent damage inflicted on him in the ring by the Russian boxer Ivan Drago. Returning home after the Drago bout, Balboa discovers that the fortune that he had acquired as heavyweight champ has been stolen and lost on the stock market by his accountant. His boxing days over, Rocky begins to coach an up-and-coming fighter named Tommy Gunn. Rocky cannot compete, however, with the high salaries and glittering prizes being offered to Gunn by other managers in town. This movie is directed by John G. Avildsen, who also directed the first Rocky movie, Rocky. Go listen to that review. This movie is written by Sylvester Stallone, who also wrote and directed Rockies 2, 3, and 4, and wrote the first Rocky. He's written every Rocky movie up to this point. The movie stars Sylvester Stallone, Talia Shire, and Burt Young. Before we go into the actual review of this episode, I just wanted to mention Rocky V. This is, in my opinion, the worst of the 6 Rocky films. This is in my opinion the weakest one. So, without any further ado, let's go to Cobbs Corner.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood in my tongue.
So, Rocky V, like all the other Rocky films that we've reviewed in the, Rocky Creed review series, and I know I said I was going to review all 6 Rocky movies and Creeds 1 and 2 ahead of Creed 3. I do still intend on reviewing, Rocky V and then Rocky Balboa and then Creeds 1, 2, and 3. So, this movie, like all the others, picks up right where the last one left off. So this movie starts off at the end of Rocky IV. Rocky has just beat Ivan Drago and made his big speech about how everyone has the ability to change. The speech before the United States, the Soviet Union, and the entire world. But then we see how he's really just starts shivering in the shower, and he just really wants to go home. He makes it back. He makes it back to the United States, and there's a press conference waiting for him in the airplane hangar. And people say how there's rumors of complications during his fight, and complications after his fight. Mental complications. And now they kind of made a joke about it in the movie, although I'm pretty sure. Now in the movie, there's one of the journalists says that the American Medical Association has recommended that boxing be banned in the United States, and then Rocky kind of laughs it off. He says yeah, I agree. I don't think that doctors should fight. Yeah, I don't think that boxers should fight. So kind of playing that off, but I'm pretty sure that was an actual concern because boxing is a very, very dangerous sport. Guys, anybody who's a boxer, to the boxers listening to this podcast, you can probably definitely second everything that I have to say in this episode about the dangers of boxing. You need a good mental state. You need to be safe, and So yeah, boxing be banned. There's those to this day saying that boxing is not safe, that it's not healthy. But in any case, Rocky, he goes back home, and he and his wife, Adrian, played by Talia Shire, and his son, Robert Jr., Rocky Jr., who's played by the late Sage Stallone, who was Sylvester Stallone's son in real life, who is unfortunately no longer with us. So we see Rocky Jr. and Paulie's moved in, so they all live in like the Balboa estate. But then they realize that while they were gone, Rocky, he owed taxes, and like Paulie gave power of attorney to like their realtor, and then he thought that he could like he did something with like the stock market, and like him trying to sell the house and then losing a bunch of money. So pretty much Rocky like goes broke. Essentially, he goes broke, and there's a plot twist. There's a sort of like a B plot that doesn't really go anywhere of Rocky having brain damage. So Rocky at this point has officially retired. He's had to sell his house. He's had to sell a ton of his assets. They've all had to move into Paulie's place that he kept in their old neighborhood in Philadelphia. Like Paulie kept that house. So they've all had to move in with Paulie, and Rocky has officially taken over ownership of Mighty Mick's gym, the gym that his trainer Mick willed the gym either to him or to his son. So he reopens Mick's gym, which I guess was closed, was closed for a number of years apparently, but between Rockies 3 and 5. So he reopens Mick's gym, and even has a flashback sequence where I guess it was probably an off-screen training scene, training scene from the first Rocky movie, where we see Rocky and Burgess Meredith, who was still alive when this movie came out. He was still alive at the time, and Mickey pretty much tells Rocky how, you are the reason why I'm still alive. If you weren't about to go fight Apollo Creed, I don't think that I would have a real reason to live. And when you live as long as I do, you watch a bunch of your friends and family members pass on, and nature is smarter than we think. So when you don't have like a reason to keep fighting, when you don't have that drive to keep fighting and to stay in it, then eventually you won't be in the fight anymore. Eventually you just give up. Then you will eventually leave this earth. Nature is smarter than we think, folks. So that was a very powerful moment. And we see in the movie, we see how like Rocky's whole story arc is all coming full circle. Like he was just a 1,000,000-to-1 shot from Philadelphia, who was given the opportunity of a lifetime to face off against Apollo. To face off against Apollo. He went the distance and lost by split decision. Then he beat Apollo in the second film, and then then there was, Rockies 3 and 4. He got all this money, all these brand deals and endorsements, and his face plastered across all these magazines. He really came from the bottom, from nothing, and then like now it's all coming full circle. Now that he's gone broke, and now he's having to move back to his old neighborhood. Along comes Tommy Gunn, an up-and-coming boxer who wants Rocky to train him. And Rocky reluctantly agrees to train Tommy Gunn. And it's funny, his name is Tommy Gunn, Gunn. Train Tommy Gunn, and so Rocky's officially a trainer now. He's officially retired from boxing. He's training Tommy Gunn, but he also sees that Tommy Gunn is a bit extreme. They go for a little like sparring match, and he's like not pulling his punches. He's really like going hard, like it's a real fight. And he's more like a street fighter, not like a boxer. Like in boxing, there's rules. So it's clear that Tommy Gunn is a bit extreme, and that he's not the most level-headed individual. He needs some coaching along. And I think really what they tried to do with Rocky 5 was they tried recapturing some of the same magic from the first Rocky movie by Rocky having to move back to Philadelphia, and now he's training the next up and coming boxer. We see like a lighting of the next torch. Rocky continuing to carry his torch while lighting the torch of Tommy Gunn, and there's like a whole training montage, and Tommy gets some professional fights under his belt, and he becomes like sort of like a really well-known, like, I guess, hero, so to speak, in Philadelphia. But then also he's being manipulated by George Washington Duke, who is played by, I forget exactly the guy's name, but George Washington Duke, who's this boxing promoter who is really just manipulating Tommy Gunn and causing him to become like money hungry. And Rocky tries to warn him about the industry and how ugly it is in the industry. And so Richard Grant plays George Washington Duke, who has been a fighting promoter who has been like handling Tommy Gunn's finances, and he's really just been manipulating Tommy Gunn, and yeah, I mean, this movie, like, it really just kind of falls flat at points. It's like, again, the whole Rocky having brain damage, that B subplot didn't go anywhere. I liked how the movie, it dives into the relationship that Rocky had with his son, Rocky Jr., and Rocky Jr., he goes to school in Philadelphia, the same school that Rocky went to. And Rocky starts to sort of not neglect his son and his wife, but he starts to spend all this time with Tommy Gunn and be focusing on Tommy Gunn and the two of them making it to the top together. Meanwhile, Tommy Gunn is being manipulated. He's becoming money hungry, and he just wants to become famous, and he just wants fame and fortune. So really, Rocky's kind of put Tommy Gunn ahead of his own family, and so that's left a strain on the relationship that he's had with his son. And yeah, I mean, in the third act, it all kind of comes to a head in the third act when it's Christmas Eve, and we see how Rocky Jr., he had a couple of his friends over the house, and like they were kind of doing their own thing, but then Rocky says how like and then like Rocky even has like Paulie dressed up as Santa Claus, and like Rocky's trying to like have a good time, but then all of a sudden, like Rocky Jr. says, like, all you care about is Tommy Gunn, you don't care about me, you lied to me, you lied to mom, we were supposed to be home team, what happened? So yeah, like it all kind of erupted. Rocky Balboa pretty much, his son pretty much saying, you don't love me or mom anymore, all you talk about is Tommy Gunn. We're your family. We're supposed to be, you and I, we were supposed to be home team, supposed to be, like this, and you guys can't physically see me, but I'm like crossing my fingers, like we were supposed to be tight. What happened? I miss the Balboa estate. I miss the big house. I miss the money. Moved back to this old neighborhood. You've changed. He said, look out for lies and deceptions, but really you were talking about yourself. Now, hey, look out for lies and deception. So yeah, so I mean, Rocky is forced to realize that maybe his son, Rocky Jr., is onto something. Maybe his son is a bit smarter than he is, and Rocky Jr., he storms out with his friends, and they go over to the local corner store. Rocky finds him. His friends leave, he sees his son smoking a cigarette, and he tells him, like, don't do that, it'll stain your teeth. And really, Rocky he apologizes. He goes over to his son, he apologizes, he says, hey, we're home team. I'm sorry, we're home team from now on. It's you and me. It's you, me, and Mom. I will always be there for you. I will always protect. Always be there to protect you, to guide you. And it all comes to a head with Tommy Gunn when he shows up. He shows up along with George Washington Duke at Rocky's house on Christmas Eve, and Tommy Gunn pretty much says, I'm taking this heavyweight championship fight against Union Kane. Union Kane, who is played by Mike Williams. Union Kane played by Mike Williams. And 50 Cent is actually in this movie as boxer number 8, apparently. That's according to Google Cast. When you look up a movie and cast. But yeah, they show up to Rocky's house, and he says how, I'm taking this fight, and with or without you, I'm ready to go to the big time. Rocky tries to warn him, and then Rocky tries to warn Tommy against the snakes in this industry, and how the second you lose, then your contract is up. Everything, it's all over. It could all go away overnight. These people, they don't love you, they don't care about you, not like I do. So pretty much Tommy cuts ties with Rocky, apparently, and and then Rocky ends up sort of like upset with the way that him saying, like, I wanted things to be better. He tells Adrian, it's like, I wanted things to be better for you and for the kid, and now I'm just another bum from the neighborhood, and which is what he felt like in the first movie. So again, it's all kind of coming around full circle, kind of. And one of like the most powerful parts of this film is when Adrian, who has noticeably, Talia Shire has noticeably aged since the first movie. Rocky Balboa. At this point, I think the movie came out in 1990. At this point, it's been 14 years since the first movie came out. So everybody's older now. And so Adrian tells Rocky how all of the beatings that he took in the ring, she took with him, and how he and her have been a team ever since. Home team, like, you and I have been a team this whole time, and I'll always be in your corner no matter what. And Tommy Gunn is not always going to be in your corner. We're your family, not him. So that was a very powerful scene. And then I think a few days later, Tommy Gunn, he faces off against Union Kane for the heavyweight championship of the world, and he wins. Although at this point, it's common knowledge that he has like cut ties with Rocky Balboa, his mentor, who put him on, who gave him the opportunity to even be standing in the same ring as Union Kane, to even be fighting him for the heavyweight title. And everybody knows that he's cut ties with Rocky, so he's already being booed on his way into the ring, and he wins in an upset victory. He beats Union Kane, who wasn't even really like in the best shape that he could have been in. He wasn't even in the best shape of his life. So even after he's won, after he has beat Union Kane, like the crowd starts chanting Rocky. They start chanting Rocky, Rocky, Rocky. Showing their support for Rocky. who's at home watching the fight. And then even after Tommy Gunn has won, he has said how he said how, like, I just want to thank the man who's made all of this possible. And he says George Washington Duke. He doesn't even acknowledge Rocky at all. All right, which is just whew, man, those are fighting words, to say the least, without giving too much away. But he wins the fight. He wins the title, and the people don't respect him. They say, we all know that Union King was a papal champion anyway. He was that the fight was probably fixed, was probably manufactured. You're not really a champ. You might win a few fights, but you're no Rocky Balboa. One of the journalists at the press conference afterwards said, like, he might win a few boxing matches, but he's no Rocky Balboa, and he'll never be Rocky Balboa. So, and then again, everybody just hates him for walking out on Rocky like that. So, I think later that night, Tommy Gunn. I guess that same night, Paulie invites Rocky over to the bar. It's like, hey, why don't we go over to the bar, have a few beers, and to which Rocky, he then asks Rocky Jr. is like, is it okay if I go with your uncle to the bar? And then Rocky Jr. says, as long as I can stay up and watch TV. So yeah, we see how, like, Rocky's, he's got his family back together. He's home team, and his home team is back together again. He goes over to the bar, and then Tommy shows up to the bar and, like, threatens Rocky. And, like, there's even people at the bar asking, like, hey, Rocky, like, do you need help? Do you need backup? Like, so, and George Washington Duke says, like, you gotta come at him, you gotta insult him, you gotta get him in the ring, in order for you to be respected, you have to actually, like, beat Rocky Balboa. So he goes over to the bar and he, like, literally threatens Rocky in his own neighborhood, all right, where he's, like, well known, all right. He's well known, and Tommy, he even, like, punches Paulie as well. Paulie even says, like, hey, you're a piece of garbage, Tommy. Rocky put you before his whole family, and then what you did was messed up. And Tommy, he kind of knocks out Paulie, but then Rocky's like, hey, you knocked him out, and I'll try knocking me out. And then George Washington Duke, he says, Tommy only fights in the ring. Rocky says, my ring's outside. They take it outside. They have a whole street fight. But, it just didn't feel, like, earned for me anyway. Like, I feel like my favorite, again, like, I realize this segment is called My Favorite Parts. Like, my favorite parts of this movie weren't even, like, the fighting scenes. Like, it was more so, like, the family moments and the way that they, like, tried to domesticate Rocky, and, they tried to, like, domesticate him and, like, have everything, like, come full circle. But I just feel like the final, like, battle, it just didn't feel earned. And I get that with this movie, they're trying to recreate some of the same magic of the first Rocky movie, which also took place in Philadelphia and was directed by John G. Avildsen and, MGM and United Artists, and was written by Sylvester Stallone. And then Stallone wrote and directed 2, 3, and 4. So he stepped out of the director's chair for 5. And maybe that's why I think this is the weakest one. It's like, you had, like, Rocky, the first 4 Rocky movies came out, hard. It was, 1, 2, 3, 4. I said in the Rocky 4 review that I did a few months back that Rocky 4 is my favorite one. I went into this whole analysis of, like, the USA versus the USSR and the significance of that movie at that time. But this movie is just, I don't know. Like, the third act didn't feel earned. Sylvester Stallone was, like, middle-aged. He was in his 40s at that point. Yeah, just as a movie, this one just wasn't it for me, Just wasn't it. it just didn't, like, it was a fun movie, I guess. It's a 90s movie for sure. Like, it's a 90s movie. It's a product of the 90s. I'm sure kids growing up around that time, late 80s, late 80s, early 90s, I'm sure kids might have liked it. They're kind of setting the stage for, I guess, like the next generation or whatever. But even as Gen Z, like, I just feel like this movie doesn't hold a candle to any of its predecessors. Doesn't hold a candle to any of its predecessors. And, like, last thing I'll say before going to the themes and analysis is that this film is very forgettable. On to themes and analysis. So all that said, this movie deals with themes of coming full circle. Rocky going from rags to riches to then back to rags, and coming full circle. Theme of family. We see Rocky. Sort of mend the relationship that he had with his son, which isn't something that was talked about in any of the previous movies. Wasn't talked about in Rocky's, 3 or 4. So we get some more one-on-one time with Rocky and Rocky Jr. And so yeah, themes of family, themes of like transitioning and knowing that your time on top is finite, that it is limited. We see as early as Rocky 3, Rocky begin to contemplate retirement. He officially, I think we saw in Rocky 4 how he had to forfeit his title as World Heavyweight Champion because the, American Boxing Commission, they refused to sanction the fight against Ivan Drago in Russia. So he relinquished the title and relinquishing the title and then coming home and then being forced to retire due to his brain damage. So themes of like transition from one role to another, going from boxer to trainer, and being an example to others, being an example to those who come after you, and inspiring the next generation. Those are, I guess, the main like themes. But as I said in the last part, this film isn't all that like memorable. It had like, I think, an all-around forgettable antagonist. Tommy Gunn is, in my opinion, one of the most annoying like like film antagonists that we've gotten. But definitely the most annoying and the most forgettable of the Rocky franchise. Like going from, I guess, Apollo Creed, who the thing that I liked about Apollo Creed was that he's introduced to the first film, and I talk about it in my review of Rocky, how like he's introduced in the first film as this like very savvy businessman. He's got like a whole organization behind him, and he's a boxer, but he's also a businessman, and he's also wants to market this fight, and he's very, very smart, very intelligent individual who's got resources as well. Very savvy businessman, but also very like flashy, flamboyant, very charismatic individual who isn't introduced as like a flat out villain. Even in Rocky 2, like after Rocky goes the distance, like he, when they're in the hospital, Rocky asks him like, hey Apollo, like did you give me your best? And Apollo admits that yes, I gave you my best, and you still went the distance. So yeah, and then he goes from pretty much a rival of Rocky's. The two of them, they face off again in Rocky 2, and Rocky knocks him out. He goes from being rival to then best friend. And even at the end of the fight in Rocky 2, Rocky still goes over to Apollo, and Apollo tells him like good luck. And as Rocky's holding the belt, he says, thank you, Apollo. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for fighting me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to become, the world heavyweight champion. And then Apollo becomes Rocky's ally, Rocky's best friend in Rocky's like 3 and 4. So, and yeah, I'll admit, Clubber Lang, we only see him for that one movie. And it was also the introduction of Mr. T. It was Mr. T's very first movie. So yeah, Rocky 3, Clubber Lang, he was kind of a one-dimensional one-dimensional antagonist, as was Drago, very one-dimensional character who we do see again later in the Creed movies. But yeah, and then there's like Tommy Gunn, who just is not as interesting to watch. He's this young, like whiny, just annoying character. Just So yeah, he was definitely like instantly forgettable. This movie is very forgettable, and very much so a product of its time as a movie from the early 90s. I think this movie is also a real testament to like nothing lasts forever. And like I said, they were trying to recreate the same magic of the first Rocky movie, capture that same energy that John G. Avildsen had in 1976 with Rocky, when Sylvester Stallone was like 30 years old. Like he was, and he was young, he was new. Like I was watching like the classic trailer for Rocky, and like the narrator saying like, his name is Sylvester Stallone, but you will remember him as Rocky. So when people think of Rocky, they don't think of like, they don't think of, Rocky Balboa in that street fight against that kid, Tommy Gunn. Like, people don't remember the franchise for this movie. I mean, this movie, it exists. And yeah, it's a part of like the story and all, but it's not all that memorable. Yeah, it's really not all that memorable. I feel like I've talked enough smack about this movie. Let's move on to Rocky 5 Plus. So this movie did not win a single award, but it has gotten 9 nominations. 9 nominations, including the Satellite Awards. It was a 2009 nominee at the Satellite Awards. Satellite Award for Best Overall Blu-ray Disc. Rocky, The Undisputed Collection. 7-disc Blu-ray set. So, which was shared with Rocky, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4, and our next film, Rocky Balboa. So I'm not sure what the 7th disc was. That might have been like a bonus disc or behind the scenes or something. But Okay, I think a couple of the other Rocky movies had gotten some like Oscar recognition. This is, to my knowledge, the first and only Rocky movie, and this is including, you know, Creeds 1, 2, and 3, the Creed trilogy, and our next film, Rocky Balboa, to be nominated for a Razzie. All right, I'm pretty sure that we got some Oscar nominations between Rockies 1, 2, 3, and 4. Rocky 5, we got some Razzies. All right. To the uninitiated, Razzies are pretty much the Oscars for terrible films. So, in 1991, nominee for the Razzie Award for Worst Picture, Robert Chartoff and Irwin Winkler, the producers of most of the Rocky movies, you know, Chartoff Winkler Productions. 1991, this movie was nominated for Worst Picture at the Razzies. That same year, Sylvester Stallone was nominated for Worst Actor at the 1991 Razzie Awards. Talia Shire was nominated for Worst Actress. Burt Young nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. John G. Avildsen nominated, 1991 nominee for the Razzie Award for Worst Director. Oh, and Sylvester Stallone. Okay, so Stallone was nominated for 2 Razzies, Worst Actor and Worst Screenplay. Alan Menken nominated for Worst Original Song. I think the original song in this movie is like "Go For It" or something. You see, and this is why I say this is definitely like a '90s movie, because like it was like all like, you know, hip hop and stuff, and it's like that worked for like the Creed movies. It just didn't work for this movie. Like the soundtrack just wasn't that great. Like all the previous Rocky movies, particularly Rocky 4, I'd say Rockies 3 and 4 come with like the hardest soundtracks. Most of the soundtrack for Rocky 4 was done by Survivor, and it was like original songs. Like I think "Living in America" might have been written for Rocky 4. Might have been. I'm not sure if that's a song that existed previously. But, you know, you had "Living in America" by James Brown. You had "Burning Heart" by Survivor. You had, you know, "Hearts on Fire," "Sweetest Victory." You know, the soundtrack for this movie, again, it just was too generic, and I didn't get enough from like the needle drops in this movie. So, Young Artist Awards, 1991 nominee, Young Artist Award, Best Young Actor Starring in a Motion Picture, Sage Stallone. So, that's the only real good that came from the only positive nomination. 2 positive nominations, you know, one was from like distribution from Blu-ray, and then the other, Sage Stallone was nominated for Best Young Actor Starring in a Motion Picture, Sage Stallone, 1991. So, on to the trivia. During shooting, John G. Avildsen felt the cinematographer Stephen Poster was overlighting many scenes. He told Poster he wanted the film to look more like the Rocky 1976, in which James Crabe often used a single spotlight to light an entire scene, such as the opening boxing match. Poster told Avildsen that the original film, quote, looked like a cheap documentary. Avildsen smiled and said, "Exactly." I did notice that in a couple of the scenes, like a couple of those, like the very first fight of the first Rocky movie, where we see Rocky fighting in that, like, I think it's in a church, like a boxing match in like a church or like church basement, because you see like there's like a mural of like Jesus in the background. I think that exact same place is where like Tommy Gunn has his first fight. So yeah, again, they're trying to like recreate. It's like they're trying not to be a remake of the first Rocky, while also trying to capture the same like energy from the first Rocky movie. Sylvester Stallone originally planned to make the effects of Rocky's brain damage much more visible and painful to see, but altered these plans after watching a few days of footage, because the sight of Rocky like that was, quote unquote, like seeing your favorite dog with dysplasia. Wow. Okay, well, I mean, that explains why. That explains why that why that didn't really go anywhere, the whole like brain damage subplot. So yeah, dysplasia refers to the abnormal development of cells within tissues or organs. It can lead to various conditions that involve enlarged tissues, such as hip dysplasia. It can also lead to the formation of precancerous cells. Dysplasia can occur in any area of the body and can vary in degree of severity. That's coming from Medical News Today. In an interview with Jonathan Ross, Sylvester Stallone was asked to rate each of the Rocky movies out of 10. He gave this movie 0. Wow. So even Stallone recognized, it's like even he was willing to acknowledge some of his like bad works and that sort of thing. I mean, like, it's one thing for us, the viewers and the critics, the podcasters to like put in our 2 cents. It's another thing entirely for literally the guy who wrote the screenplay and starred in it, for him to give this movie like a 0 out of 10. For him to say like, this is my worst film, essentially. So Sylvester Stallone originally toyed with the idea of killing Rocky off at the end of the film. The plan was that Rocky would die in an ambulance on its way to the hospital with Adrian by his side. At the hospital, she would have announced to the world of his passing, and his spirit would live on with a final flashback of the famous scene of him running up the steps. Stallone ultimately abandoned this concept and rewrote the ending. I'm glad that he decided to make this choice, choosing to keep Rocky alive. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten the Creed franchise, I think. But man, in an alternate universe, I'm wondering, like, in an alternate universe, like, would that have been a better film? Just saying, Of course, ramifications and everything, but... All right, last bit of trivia. This is the first movie where Rocky's real name, Robert, is used. When Rocky first meets Tommy Gunn, as George Washington Duke pulls up in his limo, Duke says, "Mr. Robert Rocky Balboa." So I was right. About a year ago, when I was on Backlook Cinema, the podcast, we had pointed out, as we were going through the IMDb on our review of Rocky, this was maybe September, either September or October of last year. So go check out episode 90 of Backlook Cinema. We said how Rocky's full name is Robert Rocky Balboa, but it's not really said in any of the films. I had said how maybe it was said in Rocky 5 during some like the legal battle scenes, but nope, turns out George Washington Duke, he addresses Rocky as Mr. Robert Rocky Balboa. So yeah, his full name that's his full government name. On to some goofs. Continuity. At the end of Rocky IV, 1985, Rocky's son, born in 1976, is 9. However, at the beginning of Rocky V, which in the movie's timeline takes place only a week after the end of Rocky IV, the boy is already 12 or 13. In addition, Rocky IV is set in 1985. We know this because it is nearly the 9-year anniversary of Rocky and Adrian, and they were married in 1976. Yet in this movie, Rocky Jr. and his friends are watching the 1989 movie National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I did kind of notice. I kind of picked up on that, and I kind of figured as much. Some sort of gaps in like continuity here and there. Yeah, I definitely picked up on that. But not the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. As of the recording of this podcast, I haven't seen any of the National Lampoon's movies. Not even Animal House. During Rocky's fight with Drago in Rocky IV, Duke's mustache was black. In the beginning of this movie, which takes place in the locker room after the fight, his mustache is noticeably gray. Again, gaps in continuity, but also at that point it had been 5 years since Rocky. 5 years since Rocky IV. Rocky IV was 1985, and then this movie was 1990. So 5 years later, actors, they age over time. People I'm sure you don't look exactly the same way that you did 5 years ago. Yeah. Even though the events in this movie are supposed to be directly after the fight in Rocky 4, Adrian's hair is about 5 or 6 inches longer than during the fight. Yeah. Okay. I didn't pick up on that piece of information. Definitely didn't pick up on that. But somebody probably from like the hair and makeup department put that in on IMDb. Factual errors. During the end credit montage, which shows stills from all 5 Rocky movies chronologically, the still of Rocky running through the Italian market during the first film section is actually a shot from Rocky II, 1979, in which he also ran through that same market. I remember, as we were reading through the trivia from the first Rocky movie, that apparently that first jog through the market was shot guerrilla style, and it was improvised. And when the shop owner tossed him the apple, and it looked real, it looked like it was staged and scripted, but that was all improvised, and it just worked. It just worked, and it made its way into the film. Yeah. But yeah, that's a kind of factual error. Incorrectly regarded as goofs. When Rocky is having a flashback of training with Mickey when he is in the gym, Mickey gives him the necklace that he said was given to him by Rocky Marciano. However, in Rocky II, Apollo is wearing the same necklace when he crumbles Rocky's picture off the mirror. Oh, okay. However, in this exchange, Rocky asks what happened to his other cufflink, and Mickey replies, "I don't know. He only gave me one. He gave it to some bum. In all likelihood, the person that got the other cufflink was Apollo Creed." Okay. So yeah, incorrectly regarded as a goof. I'm having a bit of Mandela effect, a bit, because now I got to think back to that specific scene in Rocky 2 where Apollo crumpled the. Yep. I can see. I can see the scene. All right. I'm gonna take their word for it. That's the actual cufflink, right? I'm sure. Maybe it is. At the press conference at the airport, when Rocky returns to the States, he is challenged by Union Kane for the title. Rocky gave up the title in Rocky IV to fight Drago in Russia. Therefore, he was not the champion. So for Union Kane to challenge him would have just been a regular fight, not a championship one. However, it is never stated that Rocky is the current sanctioned champion. When Rocky left for Russia, the title became vacant. He and Union Kane could potentially be fighting for the currently vacant title, providing this was approved. This is exactly what happens when Kane eventually wins against another opponent. So yeah, eventually Kane became the champion, and then Tommy Gunn challenged him for the championship. So yeah. Rocky's championship belt is in the basement, despite burying it with Apollo Creed's body in Rocky IV. However, as both men held the championship, it is likely that both would have had replicas that they could permanently keep. Revealing some mistakes. When Tommy Gunn is delivering one of his punches in the big fight, the Adidas symbol on his shirt is on the wrong side, revealing this is a mirrored image. Okay, cool. Eagle-eyed viewers. At about 18 minutes, 20 seconds, there's a shot of a newspaper with the title, "Rocky's Bankrupt." The text underneath is completely unrelated to this. Honestly, not surprised. But I do remember seeing the Rocky's Bankrupt. That part I do remember seeing. Crew or equipment visible. When Rocky and his family move back to the old house and everyone is crowding the street after Rocky Jr. places the box on top of his head and walks away, a cameraman is visible in the window on the top floor of the house. The red blinking light on the camera is clearly visible. I kind of figured as much. These scenes in the movie where there's usually camera crews present, and there's all these fans present. I figured as much. Plot holes. Rocky lost his fortune because Paulie signed a paper giving power of attorney to Rocky's accountant, who promptly used Rocky's money to invest in several shady ventures. The accountant had Paulie sign because Rocky would be in the Soviet Union. But Paulie was in the Soviet Union with Rocky, so he couldn't have signed over a power of attorney. John G. Avildsen, Sylvester Stallone, Robert Chartoff, Erwin Winkler. If any of you can hear me, if any of you are listening, I'm sure myself and all of my listeners, we want an explanation for this plot hole. All right, I know that this movie came out 33 years ago, but here we are. This plot hole, explain it, please. John G. Avildsen, I know you're listening. I would love to have you on the podcast. Okay, all are welcome here. All right, it's Cobbs Corner. TV, film, pop culture. Right? Character errors. When Rocky Jr. is arguing with his dad about Christmas, Rocky tells him to remember last year, even though last Christmas he was fighting in Russia and was not with his son then either. Just now realizing that. After the fight is over, Rocky makes a statement that, paraphrased, he is sure that his kid has been watching the fight even though he should have already been in bed. When the time difference in Moscow, even if the fight had finished in Russia by midnight, then it would have been 6 p.m. or early evening in Philly. All right. Okay. So, time zone difference. But again, only folks who have like a good knowledge of like time zone difference between East Coast United States and like Russia, or wherever in Russia they were fighting. Me coming out to Micronesia, this is my first time like on this side of the international date line. So had the worst jet lag the first couple weeks. In the beginning of the movie, in the shower, Rocky is talking about something that Mickey said about when he was fighting right before he died. However, right before Mickey died in Rocky 3, he didn't say any of that. Very true. Very, very true. On to some quotes. Mickey in the flashback sequence. Come here, Rock. My God, you ready, ain't you? That Apollo won't know what hit him. You're gonna roll over him like a bulldozer, an Italian bulldozer. Kid, I know how you feel about this fight that's coming up, because I was young once too. And I'll tell you something. Well, if you wasn't here, I probably wouldn't be alive today. The fact that you're here and doing as well as you're doing. Bless me. The fact that you're here and doing as well as you're doing gives me, motivation, to stay alive. Because I think that people die sometimes when they don't want to live no more. Rocky, present day, remembering, nature's smarter than people think. Mickey, in the flashback, and nature is smarter than people think. Little by little, we lose our friends. We lose everything. We keep losing and losing till we say, what the hell am I living around here for? I got no reason to go on. But with you, kid, boy, I got a reason to go on. And I'm gonna stay alive, and I will watch you make good. Rocky, present day, remembering, I'll never leave you. Mickey, in the flashback, and I'll never leave you until that happens. Because when I leave you, you'll not only know how to fight, you'll be able to take care of yourself outside the ring too. Is that okay? Rocky, in the flashback, it's okay. Mickey, okay, now I got a little gift for you. Mick, you don't have to. No, wait a minute. Hey, look at that. Takes off his golden glove necklace. See that? This is the first thing. This is the favorite thing that I have on this earth. And Rocky Marciano gave me that. You know what it was? His cufflink. And now I'm giving it to you, and it it's gotta be like an angel on your shoulder. See, if you ever get hurt and you feel that you're going down, this little angel is gonna whisper in your ear. It's gonna say, "Get up, you son of a bitch," because Mickey loves you. Okay? Thanks, Mick. Hugs him. Rocky Balboa, I love you too. Mickey, in the flashback, go after him, kid. Go after him. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie that I talked about in my favorite part section. User review. He is going back to where it all began. When you're down and out, the best shot is simply to go for it. When a doctor or family member tells you that the only life you have ever known is over, that can be a pretty bitter pill to swallow. In Rocky V, Rocky Balboa is faced with such a scenario. The movie proves to me that you need to have more than one string to your arrow, as you never know when it might come in handy one day. Rocky V also points out that money and possession are not the important things in life, but family and true friends are. Losing it all does not mean a thing unless you've got something to lose, and Rocky Balboa had it all. Times have changed though. For former heavyweight champion of the world, a lifetime of fighting has taken its toll, mentally and physically, and the maneuverings of a scrupulous accountant have left him financially trapped. But resiliency and the ability to come back have been trademarks of the Rocky legend. Just when it looks like the champ is down for the count, he discovers the raw talent of a young fighter named Tommy Gunn, who just might be Rocky's last chance for glory. In a world where achievement is marked by dollars and cents, and in a profession where success is measured in wins and losses, Rocky Balboa knows that whatever the struggle, your only hope is to give it your best shot. This film is probably the weakest of the 5 films in the Rocky series, yet there are some very good parts to it. The way we see Rocky get over bankruptcy was very good, and is the way he eventually makes his family the most important thing in his life. Again, I found this story to be good, though I guess it lacked that real Rocky feel to it, mainly because the champ was unwilling or unable to get into the ring. Stallone has done a grand job in being the writer of all of the Rocky films. The cast make a final appearance that is reasonably good. Stallone is good as Rocky once again. His character is still trying to make a contribution to fighting after being told that he can no longer professionally fight in the ring. So he helps out fresh talent, Tommy Machine Gunn, who is acted by real-life boxer Tommy Morrison, R.I.P. I found this character to be just far too arrogant and stubborn, which in a way did not suit being a part of the Balboa corner. Tommy has had an interesting life, not only fighting wise, but in a personal way. He has been caught in drug rackets, drunk driving, and admitted to the world that he has contracted the fatal HIV virus. I am not so sure he is the greatest of actors, though. The normal cast members were good. Talia Shire's character Adrian lets the world know that her husband is finished boxing and has nothing else to prove in the boxing ring. Making a special appearance was Star from the first 3 films, that of Burgess Meredith. Just seeing him on screen was really satisfying. Mickey was a favorite character of mine. I must mention that I like seeing Stallone's very own son stage in Rocky as Rocky's son, Rocky Jr. He was pretty good as the son that felt left out in the cold. He also has a mean punchline, the old man. A mean punch like the old man as well. I found that all the Rocky films had terrific soundtracks. This is due to the great work of composer Bill Conti. Bill has done a wonderful job in organizing the music to go with all the fighting scenes and the poignant scenes which require that tune to set them off just nicely. Rocky V has probably the best song on any of the soundtracks, that being the Elton John hit Measure of a Man. I think it is a wonderful song with some terrific lyrics. I have loved most of the music that the Rocky movies have given us. Rocky V might not be the best movie ever made, but it certainly had some sort of impact on me. I believe if a movie only makes a slight impression on you, then it has achieved in a small way what it was meant to do. I heard that plans for Rocky VI were being made, with a script finished by Stallone just a few years ago. Personally, I feel that if it was to be made, it would not be that great a film, because Balboa can no longer make a comeback in the ring, and if he does, he could well become, as his wife said, disabled. All things being said, these films are a terrific avenue of motivation and can help any person get the spark back to turn their luck around in any venture they pursue. Rating, 3 stars, or overall 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb. This is from Old Joe, and this review was made May 16th, 2002. Shout out to Old Joe. You know who you are. 3 stars, or 6.5 out of 10. I mean, that was a mouthful. This review, solid. I agree. This is the weakest of the 5 films, but it does have some redeeming qualities. It's got some high points about, family, and, money and possessions are not everything. That's not what's important in life. It can disappear overnight. I probably should have brought that up in the segment on the themes and analysis. So definitely big shout out to Old Joe for leaving this review 21 years ago. The overall rating on IMDb for this movie is a 5.3 out of 10 stars. On Letterboxd, the score is 3.6 out of 5 stars. Official details: this movie was released on November 16th, 1990. November 16th is also my mom's birthday. Hi, Mom, if you're listening. Country of origin, United States. The movie has an official Instagram account and an MGM website. Movie was released in the languages of English and Italian. Movie is also known as Rocky the Final Bell. Filming locations: Max Bush House, 160 South San Rayfield Avenue in Pasadena, California. Interiors: Rocky's mansion, burned down on October 5th, 2005. Production companies are United Artists, Chartoff Winkler Productions, and Star Partners 3 Ltd. Box office: the movie had an estimated budget of $42 million. Gross US and Canada, only $40.9 million, so about $41 million. So this movie did not break even at the domestically. It did not break even at the box office. US and Canada, only $40 million. Opening weekend, it made $14 million at the box office opening weekend. That's November 18th, 1990. Worldwide, it made $119 million. So it did make a profit globally, but not domestically. Rotten Tomatoes. Tomato meter score and the audience scores are the same, 31%. I mean, if I were, working at Rotten Tomatoes, if I were, I would give it a score of maybe 40%. I give it, I'd be generous enough to give it 40% because, again, it doesn't hold a candle to any of its predecessors, but it had some redeeming qualities. There's good scenes. There's good in this movie. And then it kind of just fell apart. I feel the same way about Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3, solid start. Solid beginning to the movie. Had some good scenes, and then it just fell apart in the second act. This movie is no different. Critics' consensus: Rocky V's attempt to recapture the original working class grit are as transparently phony as each of the thuddingly obvious plot developments in a misguided installment that sent the franchise flailing into long-term limbo. Whew, man, critics on Rotten Tomatoes have a tendency to be a bit irate, cutthroat, But I don't disagree. I don't disagree with the critics' consensus, but I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I still think it's an okay film. In their user review, they said how, there's some redeeming qualities here and there. Where to watch Rocky 5? You can stream Rocky 5 for free on Netflix, rent it on Apple TV, Vudu, or buy it on Apple TV, or rent it on Apple TV or Vudu. You could also buy it on Apple TV or Vudu. Me personally, I have the DVD copy, so I just watched it on DVD because I'm old school. That is all that I've got for this week's episode of Cobb's Corner. Thank you for listening all the way to the very end. If you liked what you heard today, then don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you've got a movie or movie series that you would like me to review next, then all you gotta do is hit me up on Instagram or TikTok. You can also email me at cobbscornerpodcast@gmail.com. All of that information is in the show notes below. If you made it to the end of this episode, I greatly appreciate it. Be sure to turn on those post notifications so you get notified when I post, and tune in to Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs, new web show that I've got every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Chuk Standard Time, live on YouTube, available everywhere else the next day. I hope that you enjoyed your stay here at Cobb's Corner, your one-stop shop for all things TV, film, and pop culture. As always, I will talk to all of you in the next episode. Peace.